Colleagues, I rise on behalf of our colleague Frances Lankin, who's not able to be here, and I will say a few words that she's asked me to express on her behalf, and I would like to add a few comments after that with respect to my own views and experience. Senator Frances first asks me to thank colleagues for including some thoughts from her on the record at third reading of Bill C-62. I can't be in the chamber, but have been following Senate debates all week. Thank you to all colleagues for what has been a very thoughtful and important discussion. Most of the issues I would speak to, if I could be there in person, have been explored from many perspectives by others. I won't repeat those. I want to add my voice in support of this bill from my own personal and professional perspective as a former provincial minister of health and as a member of this chamber of our bicameral parliament. While the various expert opinions, which in this case are split, provide evidence-based advice to the development of public policy, the final decision on what public policy will be proposed, how and when that policy is implemented, and the other considerations that must be taken into account falls in the end to ministers, governments, legislatures, and Parliament. The final step is and should be an exercise in democratic governance, which includes the requirement to respect collaborative federalism and federal-provincial territory jurisdictional realities. I support the FPT assessment that a 3-year extension before this provision, if made, comes into effect, is in the best overall interests of Canadians and responsible lawmaking. I understand from first-hand government and legislative experience the considerations that are before ministers. The second perspective I bring to this is as a member of this institution and as structured consideration of the scope of my role as a senator. Whatever our individual preferences regarding the proposed bill is, we are always and must consider the role of the Senate in our parliamentary system. A bill that passes the democratically elected and accountable chamber, in a minority government to boot, must be treated with considerable respect and appropriate deference. For many reasons, I support this bill, and I urge colleagues to do the same. That is Senator Frances Lankin. Colleagues, I entered this debate somewhat reluctantly, frankly, because of my recent personal experience, but I also do so in some respects because so many senators missed the debate 8 years ago. And for those of us that were there 8 years ago, it has to be the most important public policy debate I've been a party to in this chamber. And if you read the record, the one in which I believe the Senate rose to insightful debate, and we learned from each other and reached amendments to the bill that was before us that we sent to the other chamber. The other chamber considered and accepted some, but not all. And I want to read from you to you the words of the then government representative when the message came from the other place. Who was that? Honourable Senators, I do not propose to speak long because we have, over the course of the last 2.5 weeks, debated extensively the matters before us, and we all understand that the situation we now face with a message from the House of Commons. I think it is important to me to say a few words with respect to where we are with the message and the motion that I have tabled. I believe the Senate has done its work. We have, through the exercise of debate and the work of the Senate, engaged Canadians on the issues involved in what was then Bill C-14. We have, through our amendments, perfected the bill to a great degree and provoked in the other chamber yet another debate and reflection in the broader public debate with respect to the amendments that we made. This is the role of the Senate, to provoke, to inquire, to make recommendations for improvement, to urge the government to consider our reflections. The role of the House of Commons and the government is to consider the recommendations that we have made, to take seriously the amendments and the views of the Senate, and I believe they have done that. They have done that in a respectful fashion by seeking to accommodate and engage the other chamber with respect to the amendments that we have brought forward. That is their role. They are the representatives of the people, and the government will be held accountable for the implementation of the bill. Hopefully, this chamber will conclude later today, worthy of royal assent. I reference this because this is not a debate that has come to us only in the last few weeks. It is, in a sense, a conversation this chamber has had with the other chamber for the last 8 years. And we, in the last iteration, made recommendation to the other chamber, which they accepted, and now on reflection are saying, after consultations, which we envisaged that they would engage in, that the system is not ready. And I think it's important for us institutionally to understand our role and the restraint with which we should exercise our judgment. And I want to quote, not from the previous government representative, but from our former colleague Ian Shugart. And it was only his first and last speech, but it is worthy of reflection, where he spoke of restraint. This is last June 20th. We have the seeds of a constitutional crisis. An essential ingredient in avoiding or resolving such a crisis will be the practice of restraint. Our Constitution is black letter, law, and convention, practices developed over decades and centuries, in which the instinct to exercise raw power is restrained for the common good. Absent restraint, the convention that the Senate's duty is to scrutinize, amend, and pass legislation balanced against deference to the chamber that most directly reflects the will of the people is incomplete. In other words, colleagues, I believe that the bill before us and its passage, which I endorse, would be an appropriate exercise of the Senate's role that is deliberative, that is respectful, but ultimately is one of restraint. And I would encourage you to adopt this bill.